So this is probably the worst series of videos I've seen in a while, and I want to zero in on this one in particular titled "The M1 Garand Wasn't Designed to Be Accurate, and That's Why It Worked." And that's because I have a little bit of knowledge on the subject. I made a video exploring the accuracy of the M1 a couple years ago in which I used some primary sources that I'll be revisiting here. So beyond the clickbaity title, I can't tell if this video is AI written or this guy actually wrote and recorded this stuff unironically, but if he did, I want to start calling stuff like this a term I'm coining as Neo-Fudd lore, and I'll explain how that differs from regular Fudd lore at the end of the video. So he opens up his video with this. When people talk about accuracy today, they're usually thinking about tight groups, bench rest groups, holes touching in the paper. That's not how the US Army thought about accuracy in the 1930s and 40s. They weren't asking how small is the group, they were asking something else entirely. No, that's actually exactly what the Army was talking about and asking for. So in this document, we see that in order for a rifle to meet acceptance standards, it had to shoot a 5-shot, 5-inch group at 100 yards from a rest, roughly 5 minutes of angle. In this document concerning serviceability and acceptance standards at the arsenal, the rifles had to shoot a 5-shot, 1.7-inch group at 1,000 inches from a rest, which works out to about 5.8 minutes of angle. So yeah, every single M1 rifle that entered US military service was intended to be accuracy tested and had to meet an accuracy standard. And the way they went about doing that was they shot a group from a rest and then measured the size of that group. Now, what is or what isn't considered accurate is usually pretty subjective, but I think we can all agree it would be fair to compare the accuracy standards of the M1 rifle to one of its contemporaries. So let's compare the accuracy to the Mauser Kar98K, a bolt-action rifle and primary service rifle of the German military during World War II. Very well designed, very high quality, looked back on fondly, generally considered very accurate. Well, Bloke on the Range has a great video referencing original German manuals, and in that video, the standard for leaving the factory of a Kar98 was it had 2 chances to make a 5-shot group that measured 5.5 minutes of angle. So the M1 rifle was produced with an accuracy standard in mind that was higher than a contemporary bolt-action rifle. So that pretty much solves the main premise of this guy's video, but let's continue anyways. Most of the video is just AI-sounding, flowery speech and unqualified statements, stuff like, when the Army talked about accuracy, they meant practical accuracy. No, they were talking about accuracy, like the old-fashioned accuracy. The US Army cared about the accuracy of everything. Accuracy of the ammo, accuracy of the rifle, accuracy of the shooter, and most importantly, they would combine all three into what's called a rifle qualification, and back in those days, even the Army would conduct this rifle qualification out to 600 yards. And back then, of course, they were shooting on bullseyes of a known size with concentric scoring rings in unsupported positions. Now, generally, when people start throwing the word practical around, it's usually in opposition to this type of shooting, but considering this is the generation that won the Second World War, I'd say it was pretty damn practical. Bullseyes with traditional concentric scoring rings are essentially a way to translate groups into a rudimentary form of what we now call circle error probability, which is similar to the older term figure of merit. And that's an important distinction to make because your score doesn't just measure the overall group size, but gives greater weight to shots closer to the center of the target, like the latter two measures. So to go back to that first statement about the Army not thinking about tight groups or holes touching on the paper, that is exactly what the Army was thinking about. I think it's kind of insane that I have to explain to more and more people why groups matter, especially slow fire groups. Slow fire group shooting is the most basic and important way of measuring your first shot hit probability. And that's why when the US military's marksmanship doctrine was led by marksmen, there was so much emphasis put on the fundamentals and slow fire, precise shooting. And I bring up hit probability because he has another video that's similar AI slop called 38 Special Wasn't Designed to Be Accurate. And there he talks about how 38 Special wasn't designed to be accurate. It was designed for hit probability. So let's talk about hit probability. The reason why every military that's proficient at conducting war is concerned with having accurate rifles and accurate ammunition is because those two things directly increase the hit probability of aimed fire. Say we have a rifle that shoots 4 minutes of angle. Say we have a shooter shooting that rifle and produces a group that's 6 minutes of angle. So the shooter's marksmanship ability added 2 minutes of angle to the mechanical accuracy of that system. So this is what his group would look like overlaid on an E-type silhouette at 600 yards. As you can see, his chance of hitting the target on his first shot is not bad at all. Now, let's give this same shooter a 1 minute of angle rifle. Again, the shooter's ability adds the same 2 minutes of angle to the mechanical accuracy of the rifle and ends up with a 3 minute of angle group. Now his first shot hit probability at 600 yards is virtually a guaranteed hit. Now, of course, this is super simplified and assumes things like a complete Gaussian distribution of his shot pattern, which basically never happens in reality. But this is basically how the military thought of hit probability in relation to the ammunition's accuracy, the rifle's accuracy, and the shooter's rifle qualification on the known distance range. Well, that's not real life. That's not practical. It's data collection, dude. It's meant to be objective. We can't, unfortunately, conduct objective studies that are that granular and specific on the battlefield. But you'd have to be an idiot to think that no one ever considered the mechanical accuracy of a rifle or optimal accuracy a shooter can achieve with that rifle before sending them into combat. So yeah, maybe the title of this video should be "The M1 Garand was designed to be accurate, and that's why it worked so well." And that leads me to the next statement he made. The sights aren't target sights. They're fast, clear, and forgiving. The sights on this rifle are target sights. There's no other way around it. Who told you that these weren't target sights? No other country at the time I know of had an aperture sight that was click adjustable for both windage and elevation. Basically, every other rifle at the time in mainline service used open sights that were only elevation adjustable in pre-calculated increments. The exceptions were the United States and Britain, both countries with high participation in shooting competitions and strong marksmanship traditions at the time. Not only that, but the M1 Garand sights were truly cutting-edge target sights at the time. If your gun had target sights in the 1930s, they were almost uniformly without click adjustments. They were usually infinitely adjustable screws and would sometimes use locking screws or a jam screw arrangement to hold your adjustment. The problem with that is because they were infinitely adjustable, they were difficult to return to the exact same position. And they were slow to adjust in general because you had to manually lock down your adjustments. Worst of all is they had a tendency of shooting themselves loose. The detent click sights were a major development that came directly from the high-power service rifle world and on pistols from the bullseye world. So yes, these are target sights. So much so that when the M16A2 had its return to form and gave troops back these very same sights, people today will claim that the M16A2 is a target rifle pretending to be a service rifle. So what does that make this? That's like always been America's thing. We put target sights on everything. And that goes back to the 19th century on through pretty much every service rifle from the 1880s onwards, probably earlier than that too. Even the Browning automatic rifle, which fires from the open bolt, got a set of sights ripped straight off the 1917 Enfield. Anyways, to finish this video, he leaves us with this absolute gem. He says, "The Garand didn't win wars because it was accurate. It won because it did what it was supposed to do, which is this right here." Let's talk about Neo-Fudd lore, because I think it's interesting that we're at this point in the modern gun discourse, whatever you want to call it. So think about your traditional Fudd archetype, right? They think the M1 Garand shoots 30-06 high explosive anti-tank rounds, and that the M16 can't hit anything and isn't good for nothing more than shooting squirrels, right? And that's because they view the world through this whole, guns are only for hunting and going to the range once a year sort of worldview. I think Neo-Fudd lore is very similar in that Neo-Fudds try to make everything fit into this tactical, post-Jeff Cooper, whatever they define as practical at the time type of worldview, or that guns are only for self-defense or shooting large targets, really close sort of arguments. They're the same type of people you show someone something cool like a Smith & Wesson Model 52, and they're like, "That's stupid, that's not practical, I wouldn't carry that." Whereas like the traditional Fudd would look at the same thing and be like, "Well, that's stupid, that's not for hunting, I couldn't kill a deer with that." Of course, both views are equally, you can use a gun for pretty much anything, right? Hickok 45 trims his trees with a shotgun. You can probably think of more things to use an M1 Garand for than shooting a man-sized target at like 15 yards and missing. Anyways, yeah, I guess this was a short little fun one to get me back in the spin of things. Obviously, I haven't uploaded a long-form video since late December. I kind of burned myself out on the K38 video, but I've been working on a bunch of video scripts, including some stuff that's a little experimental. I've been playing a lot of Halo 3 lately, so I hope if you're watching this, you like Halo, because I'm probably going to make a Halo video. If you don't like Halo, why not, right? Anyways, thank you all for watching. Thank you especially to my channel members and Patreon supporters for supporting the channel directly. Have a great day.